Heading to Italy for the first time or after a few years, or even decades, listen on as my friend Corinna Cooke and I reveal our top travel tips for first-time visitors and share our first trips to Italy, both in a style that might surprise you.
Ciao a tutti and benvenuti to Untold Italy, the travel podcast where you go to the towns and villages, mountains and lakes, hills and coastlines of Bella Italia. Each week your host, Katy Clarke, takes you on a journey in search of magical landscapes, history, culture, wine, gelato, and of course, a whole lot of pasta. If you're dreaming of Italy and planning future adventures there, you've come to the right place.
Dreaming of arriving in Italy, strolling into a gelateria and ordering your gelato with confidence? If you've been learning Italian with language apps but still can't string a sentence together, it might be time to try another approach. My friend Michelle from Intrepid Italian offers a practical way to learn travel-ready Italian. Thanks to her unique 80-20 method, Michelle teaches you exactly what you need to know to connect with locals and have more authentic travel experiences. There's no getting bogged down in awkward phrases and unnecessary grammar. As an adult learner herself with Italian heritage, Michelle really knows how to bridge the gap between English and Italian. As Roma from London said, the learning methodology is great. I progressed much faster in the last 4 weeks than I ever did on my own or using other language apps. To find out more and claim your free Italian travel phrase guide, visit untolditaly.com/Italian or visit the link in the show notes. As a bonus, you'll also get an exclusive $20 coupon code to use on any of Michelle's online self-paced courses. So visit untolditaly.com/Italian and accelerate your Italian language journey today. Ciao, buongiorno everyone. I hope you're doing well and enjoying life as Europe and the Northern Hemisphere heads into summer. Looks like things are really hotting up in Italy over the next few weeks, so I've done a rethink of my packing and I've added in a couple more floaty dresses and swapped a pair of flats for another pair of sandals. Now, before we get started on this week's episode, I want to take a moment to remember two travellers and incredible women who we've lost too soon. On the day we recorded this episode, Corinna's friend Melissa lost a very short but brutal battle with cancer. Corinna had many adventures in Italy with Melissa, and she was an important friend that bridged the oceans between the United States and Europe for her. I know Corinna cherishes the stories and laughter and fun they had together and just wishes that she could be here. Earlier this year, a good friend's young daughter was taken from us too soon. Soraya was a bright, shining star with an incredible future ahead of her. She embraced her mum's passion for travel and sense of adventure and was a talented dancer. Soraya had been to more countries and experienced more cultures than most of us will ever enjoy in our lifetimes. And as my friend Sharon and her family navigate this world without her, I know that they cling to those memories that they spent together as a family exploring the world. So this episode is dedicated to Melissa and Soraya, who without a doubt would have wished that each of us sees every opportunity to see the world, to meet people from countries far and wide, and know that we're not so very different after all. Bentornata, Corinna, my dear friend. Welcome back to the Untold Italy podcast.
Thank you, Katy. It is wonderful to be back again, to be invited back again. And hello, everybody.
Buongiorno, buongiorno. Now, Corinna and I, we like to talk. And when we were talking recently about Le Marche, we had a bit of an idea to also maybe share some tips for first-time visitors. And so that's why Corinna's back today. So if you don't know Corinna, you really should. And so I'll just get her to introduce herself because she does that way better than I do.
Oh, thank you, Katy. Yeah, my name's Corinna Cooke, and I write a book series called the Glam Italia How to Travel Italy books. And these are guides that show you a different way of seeing Italy and different things to see inside the big city centers as well. There's so much to do in Italy. It's wonderful. And this is just a chance to see some things that the tour bus crowds are not going to see. I also run small group tours for women called the Glam Italia tours. And along the way, I've learned a lot of tips that I wish I had known when I was first going there.
So many mistakes.
You learn from making mistakes. And I also think that, when you go on forums, like sometimes things will pop up about like some Italy travel group or whatever. And if I have a look in it, I often find it quite toxic. And I would find that if it was me going for my first time, I would find some of these people snapping away quite bossy, unpleasant. So with this, we want to address people who are going for the first time and just things that you may not know about. And if you do already know about them, great. And, there's going to be stuff in here you didn't know. And if you don't know any of it, great. Like we're just going to meet you wherever you are and tell you some cool
We're going to have
tips.
fun. We're going to try and do it quickly. Good luck with that. So I thought, though, first we could start off with our first trips to Italy because I think, after a while, we've been so many times, but, you have to really take yourself back to the first time to really put yourself in those shoes to really remember what it was like and, the journey, the life journey or the travel journey that we've been on to actually get to a point where we do feel like we are the seasoned travelers. I was going to say wise and old drones. But come on, we are fabulous. So it's like your older auntie. We've done it a few times. And so please take everything with a grain of salt. But I feel like we have some years under the belt and we can give you some considered advice.
Yeah, and I think most of these things, I really wish that somebody had told me before, maybe not before my first time, because my first time I was just a complete idiot anyway. But like a lot of these things, I wish that someone had told me and that I didn't have to learn the hard way. But my first time to Italy, I was only 21 years old. I'd moved from Christchurch, New Zealand, which at the time wasn't an extremely cosmopolitan place like it is now. I was living in London and came over to do my first trip around Europe. And I was on a big bus tour. It was a Kentucky tour for 18 to 35-year-olds. And I was thinking it was a 4-week tour, but I actually not too long ago went back and was looking at some stuff and realized it was a 6-week tour. So I did a 6-week tour around 11 billion countries in Europe. It was fantastic. I couldn't have organized anything. And in those days, there was no internet.
Yeah, it was very different back in those days. I did something similar actually. But I was on a Trafalgar tour and I was with my partner at the time and his parents and some, like some older people. I have to say it was not a Kentucky tour, which if you don't know the Kentucky tour, this is a bit of a rite of passage for Australians and New Zealanders and it involves typically some very late nights and a lot of drinking. But I was on a different tour and the first place that we stopped in, and I can remember it like yesterday. And also my mum kept a diary that I wrote, a little travel journal, and it's got like printed out photos, people. This is when I had to go back and get the camera roll printed. So we're all dating ourselves here, but you know what? I don't care. I was in Lake Garda. It was Malcesine. I've said it before on this podcast. And then I also went to Verona and Venice on that trip. And honestly, I couldn't believe it. Like I was so smitten. I was pinching myself the whole time because I was living in London at the time and a lot of Australians and New Zealanders do that too. So they can travel around Europe and have those adventures. And the contrast between living in the UK and Italy was not lost on me. And no disrespect to London because I've lived there a third of my adult life and, I've had some good times there. But I did not feel the same affinity there as I did when I arrived in Italy. And it was a magical time. And yes, things were very different back then, but Venice was crowded. I remember that very much. The other things that I remember, which, we don't have today, the currency was different. We had the lira back then and you had to carry around wads and wads of cash because it was a very devalued currency. You had a lot of notes, let's just say.
It's like 1,000 lira was,
A
what,
dollar.
$10? A dollar, yeah. Oh my God. I forgot about that.
I was going to ask you as well, Corinna, what do you think's changed, over the years that you've travelled in Italy?
Well, I mean, it's just so easy to get around. I think there's a lot of stuff that's changed because I just didn't know. Things like how easy it is to get around. And I personally think, I mean, been to most countries in Europe, and I personally think that Italy is the easiest one to travel. It is the easiest one to get up, down, left, right, all over the place. Plenty of places have great train systems, plenty of places have great highways, but here you've got the incredible warmth in the people as well. So I found that's incredible.
One of the things I remember is when if you were a backpacker like I was with very little money, you would not be using a travel agent. So, and there was no internet. So to get accommodation, basically the backpacking style was you'd be clutching your Lonely Planet. So you totally look like a tourist. And then you get off at the train station and you'd be met by all these people holding their like laminated advertisements for their apartment to stay in. It was like the pre-Airbnb. I'm sure the Airbnb founders, did a bit of backpacking in the 90s. It was so interesting. You were just like, oh, yeah, I like the look of that one. And then you go haggle a bit and see how much it will cost. And that was it. That was a very different thing. There was no online.
And I remember too, when I was first going to Italy, for example, the roads around the Duomo in Florence was all traffic. Like that didn't stop until comparatively recently. And, I remember, admittedly, I was fresh off the bus from from New Zealand, so fresh off the boat from New Zealand. So I didn't have a lot of experience in big, busy cities other than London. But I remember thinking, God, am I going to get hit by a car as I'm trying to like zoom across to get to the Duomo? Like get across right now is all pedestrian. So I think they have a lot more pedestrian streets now. And there's so many places that have become so cosmopolitan that were perhaps a little bit more, not rural, but not chic. I'm like Arezzo. There used to be cars in Piazza Grande. And it's so hard to think of that now because it's so incredible and such a beautiful place to sit and have a drink. And it was really comparatively recently, in my lifetime, that it was just cars and stuff happening. So
And I think, that's the beauty of Italy. Like, really, Rome is Rome. Not much has changed there for 2,000 years, except for we've added a few cars in instead of horses or whatever they had and chariots. But we do have mass tourism now, although I do really remember it being in the Vatican museums when I first went thinking, oh my goodness, this is a nightmare because it was very, very busy even then. And I don't believe it was the first time I think was in that I was in Rome would have been October, November timeframe. So we do have a lot more tourists visiting, and the democratization of travel, which is amazing, right, has meant that there are more people visiting. So there are bigger crowds, and you didn't have to prepay your tickets, and you didn't have those options.
didn't you just get your tickets when you got there? I don't remember ever having a pre-ticket to get into the Colosseum or anything. I think we just
No.
walked up.
There were still scammers though out the front. I remember, you know, they've been scamming since 300 BC, I guess.
There you go.
Or 79 AD when this Colosseum was opened. So I bet there was scammers back then, even though it was free. All right, so let's get started, shall we? We're going to go some quick tips now for our first-time visitors. And there's lots of advice out there. There's people spouting advice everywhere, and you should take it or leave it, and you should do the trip that suits you. But these are the things that I think that Corinna and I think will make things just run a little smoother.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people who will not have been out of their home country yet. This might be your first trip. Or maybe like for North Americans, they've often been to Canada, they've been to the Caribbean, Mexico, things that function quite similarly. So they haven't had to deal with any of this before. But we have three things I recommend you do before leaving home. The first one is get a travel credit card. Now, a travel credit card is one that is going to let you swipe that card internationally and not charge you additional fees. And they typically also have a much better exchange rate. So that's number one. And we did an episode quite a ways back. We talked about how the travel credit cards
Which
work.
one? I use a Wise card. It's international. You can get one all over the world. And if you're going to different countries, you can use different currencies as well.
But if you live in America, you can't have a Wise card. You can have a Wise account, but you can't have the Wise debit card.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So here in the United States, the top two are the Capital One Venture card and the Chase Sapphire card. Then there's, different banks like HSBC and the Barclay Group. They're known for having some good travel credit cards. Airlines, have attached credit cards as well that are for travel, for international travel. You want to have a credit card that anything you want to buy, anything you want to spend, that you can be able to swipe it and not be incurring international fees for doing so and have a better exchange rate. At the same time, for running cash back in the old days, we used to have traveler's checks, but remember those?
Yes, actually, one of my first jobs was working in a bank in London, counting out foreign currency and travelers' checks. It was
Oh my
actually
God.
quite fun because everyone was a student and just, like it was like such a mind-numbing task that we just went to the pub at lunchtime. Probably somebody got a few extra lira, who knows, after that.
Oh gosh, how fun. Well, so we as well as having a credit card, we also need to have access to cash because there's
Yep.
some stuff that you're going to be using cash for. Very much less now than it used to be, but you do still need cash. So you want to get a debit card, but check with your bank what they charge. For example, my bank here in the United States costs an arm and a leg to use their debit card. So I have a credit union that I belong to, and that debit card costs me nothing. Also, in the United States, if you open a Schwab account, like you don't even need to do the investing side of it, but the checking banking side of it, that debit card is free to use overseas. And again, these fees add up. So your debit card, you're not swiping it away like a credit card. You only use a debit card to pull cash as you need it. And you want to make sure you've got one that's not charging you horrible fees and that is not giving you a terrible exchange rate. And then we get to number 3 on my list of before you leave home, you need to order some currency, whatever country you're going to. So if you're coming to Italy, you've got to arrive with some euros on you. And I recommend coming in with about 200 euros. So here in America, I feel like I keep saying here in America. So sorry for everybody who's not American listening to this. We normally have to order it. So I live in Phoenix. I don't think any of the banks here carry euros. So I have to order them in advance. I know I'm not going to get my best exchange rate, but it's going to be, whatever. I make sure I order it in small denominations. I try to get 20s and below because a lot of places can't break at 50 if depending on where you are. So we're on Zoom and Katy just held up a bunch of euros at me. I do believe you should have currency on you before you arrive in whatever country you're going to.
I'm just going to say the reason I got those euros out was because I got those out from my last trip and I didn't use them. So please don't go out and take out heaps of cash because you won't need it. And what do you do with it? I'm just going to be taking it back with me and I will be using it for tips and things like that.
Now, the next thing is where we're getting cash from. So avoid money exchange places. When you're walking around in Italy, you'll see ATM. When you see ATM, which is what we call them here in most of the places in America, they're called ATMs. That's actually a money exchange place that is tricking you because you're going to go, oh, an ATM, I got to go get cash. And again, you're going to get terrible exchange rates and massive fees. When you're actually in Italy, you want to pull cash from a bank, not from anything that's out on the street. And I actually always do it where you have to walk inside because it's very easy to put a cloning device on an outside ATM. Also, if you're a baddie and you're looking for some people to pickpocket and they can stand across the street, watch where you pull your card out from, where you put everything in, you're a sitting duck. So I recommend going inside the bank. And they do have ATMs inside like the bank lobby thing. Last thing I want to say there is when you are pulling cash, you don't want to be pulling $50 every day because that's going to cost you a lot in fees. You want to be pulling, like, figure out while you're there, like what you think the maximum amount you probably would need is and pull that. If you're not sure, pull, I don't know, 200, 300, and then figure it out for the next time you'll know if you need to get more or not. The ATM machine is going to offer you that they'll do the conversion for you. And so you can either accept conversion or decline. And this is a flashing neon light in your brain, decline the conversion, because that is going to give them sensational exchange rates and you terrible ones. And
Mm,
at the airports in your home country and the airport when you arrive in Italy, you're going to see money exchange places. Just keep on walking. They have the worst exchange rates. I actually put something on my Instagram just recently about it. I was taking photos, taking photos of the exchange rate. The official exchange rate was, I think, 88 cents that day, and they were going to give you, oh gosh, it was like 81 cents or something horrific. So you were going to be losing a huge amount of money. And then they've also got their fees and their other things that they put on. So that's a big no-no.
okay. So, shall we also now then like talk about things that are like just before you go and just that are good to know? One thing I was going to say about passports is that you need to have a minimum of 3 months on your passport in terms of its expiry date when you are leaving Italy. So, anyway, I don't like to go too close or run the gauntlet on that one. So, I like to have 6 months on mine
I
and be
generally
rejected.
recommend 6 months. So if you're going in June and your passport's expiring in December, let's see about getting a new passport before you go in
Yep.
June.
Yep. And
Because
then just on the passports is you need to carry your passport and it's become more important these days. I used to carry a copy and I used to say that. And in fact, if you go back on the back catalogue of these podcasts, you'll hear me say, oh, I just carry a copy. But these days, no, because people do get stopped by police on trains. And my team that lives in Italy have been stopped. They needed to provide their ID and you really it's going to ruin your holiday if you don't have it, basically, because if you don't have it, you'll have to go and turn up to the police station and you might be there for half a day. So you do need to carry your passport.
I actually got checked last time I was there, and I got checked in December when I was there. I mean, I have a home there. The police will often come on the train or be in the train station or be wherever, and just you got to show them if they ask you. So
You also
that's
need to show them now to go into the Colosseum and the Vatican museums, and a lot of the ticketing sites require that you have ID that matches your ticket. So it's a requirement. And I guess that people get very nervous about carrying such an important document around. So then maybe, Corinna, do you have any tips about security for our first time visitors to keep their passport safe?
Yeah, you want to have it zipped up. So I'm all about having a crossbody bag, and your bag is always zipped, and have it in a place that a pickpocket's not expecting it. So, like I'll have it like down the bottom of my bag with other stuff on top or whatever, but you don't have it in a pocket. And if you're going to be wearing a money belt, which some people still wear money belts, I haven't used one I don't even know how many years, but were I going, I don't know, to Mumbai, for example, I would be out of my league there. I wouldn't know what was going on, so maybe I would wear one to start off with there. So there's no shame in going ahead and wearing one, but you can keep it in your money belt that's worn under your waistband of your clothes, and you just don't get it out, no matter what, unless a police officer asks you to see it, then you'll get your money belt out, but otherwise it just stays there.
Hmm.
What about you? Where do you recommend people put their passport?
Yeah, I keep mine in my crossbody bag, and I think that the thing is it's got to have a zipper on top, and you got to have it shut, and all of that stuff, and like things on top, like you say. But also, like some people carry their phone in their bag, and like what I like now these days is to have a lanyard phone case, so you have the phone across your body as well, so you don't have to keep reaching in and out of the bag to get your phone for a start, because obviously we're taking a bazillion photos, and you have it very handy, and it's yeah, that's my way of operating. So I have a little crossbody bag and then I have my phone lanyard.
And another thing before we get off of passports, everywhere you're staying, so whether you're in a hotel,
Mm,
whether you're in an Airbnb, whether you're in a hostel, wherever it is, they by law have to photograph or scan your passport and send it into the local police. So I know some people get freaked out especially it's the first time, and you're asked to pull out your passport, and then they take a photo with their phone, and you're thinking, what on earth is happening? This is actually by law. And by the way, if you go do something bad, like say, for example, there was a couple of clowns a couple of years ago that carved their name. It was like Bob and Haley or something, carved it into the wall of the Colosseum, which I'm still staggered at. The police found them because they were able to go back and go, let's look through all the people staying in Rome tonight. Let's look through all the turned in passports where they've all been registered and see where there's a Bob and a Haley and wouldn't, there's only whatever their names were. They were the only pair with that pair of names. But, it keeps us safe. So I have no problem with it. But just know that they will ask you for your passport and they will photograph it or scan it.
My husband works in cybersecurity,
Yeah.
He's got some opinions about sharing things online, and he's absolutely appalled at some of my behaviour. But anyway, if you don't feel comfortable sharing that passport information online, then they can always take it at the desk. Especially if it's a smaller hotel, I feel like their cybersecurity practices may not be up to par. And in general, Italy has a very underdeveloped e-commerce and everything situation, which no doubt everyone has found out while they have been booking their trips. All right. Any other tips about accommodation?
Oh, I've got a lot of tips about accommodation. Okay. In Italy, you're going to pay tourist tax per person per night that you're staying there. In most cases, I think if you're more than a week in one place, then it gets reduced or something like that. I don't know. And that is normally paid in cash as well. Like I've had plenty of hotels, have said the tourist tax is paid in cash. I do a lot I call all vacation rentals Airbnbs, but they typically require the tourist tax to be paid in cash. So don't be surprised if you get to your hotel to check in and they say, and we need another 12 euros in cash. That is the tourist tax. I would say with accommodation, one thing to watch out for, like if you're booking a hotel, for example, don't book a room for one person unless you like single beds, because you're going to get a single bed, a small single bed. And I do this all the time, Katy, and I tell people not to do it. I still oh yeah, book this hotel room for one. If it's two people, you need to have a look and make sure that there's going to be either two single beds or one double bed, because they might have a room that's for two people, but when you actually look into it, it's two singles, although they can normally, I guess, put them together. And you'll notice a lot of times when there's, especially if it's an old building, when there is a room with what we would call a queen size or a king size bed, there'll be two mattresses. You're like, what on earth's going on? I only recently found this out, Katy, because one of my friends who lives in my town in Tuscany was doing up one of the rooms. She's an expat like me. And she wanted to put a queen size bed in her spare room, and it couldn't be done because you cannot get that mattress. The bed frame they can take apart, but the mattress, you cannot actually get it inside. There was no big windows for a crane to come in and put it in, and the staircase is narrow and steep. And so that's how we found out that you have to do two singles, and sometimes they're quite narrow, but it's the getting it up the stairs into the apartment. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I just think you need to leave the expectation of, unless you're going to stay in a chain hotel, just leave the expectations of what you're used to at home behind, because they're different. We've got a few episodes on accommodation. You can delve into that a bit more. But
things that are different. Okay, so where I live in America, it's pretty hot, so everybody has great air conditioning. Whereas where my son went to school up on the East Coast, Northeast, most houses didn't have air conditioning. But you are going to find that many hotels, although they have air conditioning, it's not what you're used to at home, and it's not going to be that great, or you may not have as much control over the temperature. A lot of vacation rentals, now they tend to have air conditioning units, or many more of them do, but you may have one unit for the whole apartment. So you just have to know it's Italy, it's going to be different. But the cost of electricity over there is exorbitant, and there's not a huge amount of electricity. So it's really important that when you are leaving your apartment, you turn it off and turn it back on when you get back in. I have this all the time with my people that on my tours, that they're used to the American way and they just leave it on. And then I had the landlords calling me going, Corinna, what the hell's going on? They've got the air conditioning on. So that's a big important one. Turn it off when you leave, turn it back on when you come back. Don't have the air conditioning on and windows open, which, sounds smart anyway, but you'd be surprised how many people do that. But another one, if you're not a summer traveler, another one to know is that Italy is broken into 6 zones with regards to heating. Each zone is given a date when the heating can be turned on and when it must be turned off. So you can be in Rome and it's the beginning of October and suddenly out of nowhere there's a cold snap. And guess what? You can't turn the radiators on in your apartment, or I don't know if it's all hotels, some hotels, whatever, but
I think they might be, hotels might be exempt.
but yeah, there is, and it's not one date for the whole country. It's all broken up depending on where in the country it is. But there's a date where the radiators can be turned on, and there's a date where they get turned off. And if you're cold outside of that time, it's kind of like it sucks to be you. And when I say sucks to be you, I'm talking about me.
Yeah, it sucks to be me too. I cannot do cold.
I've done panic runs to OVS and bought everything, like just gone and bought like sweatpants and sweaters and all this stuff because I don't do cold at all. So there's something to keep in the back of your mind and know that it can just be that way. Typically, there's no clothes dryers. So if you're staying in a vacation rental in an Airbnb, don't expect a clothes dryer. I had one Airbnb. I had some people in a couple of years ago that had one, and I was like, wow, I think it might be the first I've seen. So, in general, when you're doing laundry, most of them will have a washing machine, but you're going to be hanging out your clothes on a drying rack to dry. So, you need to factor this into your equation as to when you're doing laundry. You don't want to be doing something the night before you're moving on because it's not going to be dry necessarily in the morning.
Yeah,
So.
we also did remember the episode we did about what you should wear in Italy? And we can link to that one as well.
Oh yeah. That's a really good one definitely a good one for first timers to listen to because it's really important.
Because we spent a lot of time talking about fabrics.
Yeah, and all the things you need to think about with that. But the last thing I want to say about accommodation is that Italian beds typically are a lot firmer than what we have here in the United States anyway. Here in the United States, we tend to have a box spring and then a mattress that's a bit softer. Whereas there, they'll have a bed frame, they have wooden slats across the bottom, and Italians like a firm bed. So if you're staying at the Four Seasons, it's probably going to be bouncy and soft. But if you're staying in a B&B or in a Airbnb or in a, even I had plenty of hotels I've stayed in where the bed's been, pretty firm. But
there's no mattress topper, let's just say.
Yeah, I mean, it just is what it is.
Yeah.
If I would have a overly firm bed and be in Italy or be in the, optimal puffy comfort and be here or in Vegas or something, Italy's going to win every time. So it's just one of those things just to know about in advance.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know why they call it that place in Vegas Bellagio, because it's just like, it's a travesty. Like, serious. If you've been to the real one, you'll know what I mean. Okay, let's talk about tickets. Talk about getting our tickets, because we mentioned before that, you need your passport sometimes to when you book your tickets.
Yeah, so
I have a point of view on this one. It may disagree with yours. I don't understand, and I haven't been very vocal about this, but I'm just going to lay it out on the line. We have many articles, many articles on how to buy tickets for the major tourist places. You need to book them in advance these days, and you can do that online. You can book it through. In our articles, we always give the official site, because some people are very dedicated to using the official site. Well, here's the thing. They can be really ugly to use, and I value my time highly, and I do not value time trying to sort out websites that don't work. So I always use an authorized third party, and I'm happy to pay a couple of extra euros more to get the time that I want at the time, because there are all sorts of rules about ticketing when they go on sale if you buy through the official site. Each to their own. That's what I do. I know Corinna has a different opinion, but, that's what makes the world go round. But I'm quite happy to pay a couple of extra euros to not have to sit there and figure it out.
Well, I will say 2023 nearly completely derailed me. So the Colosseum, so under the Colosseum group, there's all kinds of ticketing in Rome that happens, and they were changing from co-op culture to Parco Colosseo for the ticketing. And so there was a year where everything went absolutely haywire, and it was so hard to get tickets, and you're having to stay up in the middle of the night because they were releasing them. If you wanted to go at 9 o'clock on Monday morning, they were going to release those tickets 30 days prior at 9 o'clock Monday morning, Rome time. So you're having to be up and down all over in the middle of the night trying to get tickets. It was really stressful. Now the Parco Colosseo website seems to be working better, but it can be a handful. So I know my way around it relatively well, and I'm quite happy to do it. But you want to find your most efficient way. But I will say that, kind of at least since COVID, ticketing has been timed entry.
Mm.
So if your ticket says 9:15, you can't roll up at 9:30 and say, "Oh, I was in traffic." They would say bye-bye. It doesn't matter how much you've spent on that ticket. So you really need to factor in what is the entrance time on your ticket and make sure you're able to be there, be in line. Like I always get places early because you've got to find what gate you're going in at. And when you got somewhere like the Colosseum, that's a lot of different gates. I was just at the Vasari corridor. They reopened the Vasari corridor in Florence in December. And I know my way around the Uffizi Gallery extremely well. And I've been a billion times. And I think my entrance was for 11:30 or something. And so I thought, oh, I'll get there at 10:30 or 10:15 because that was the entrance into the Vasari corridor, not into the Uffizi. And I thought I'd just like smuggle my way in a bit earlier. Oh my goodness, it was chaos getting in there. And a lot of it was because people going through the x-ray machines had apparently never seen an x-ray machine before in their lives and were walking around in circles not knowing, oh my gosh, I wanted to like throttle all of them. But for something like that to get into the Vasari corridor, it's a long way from the entrance. You have to go the full length of the Uffizi, go up 3 flights of stairs to the top, go the full length back, come down another series of stairs, and then go to where you're going to go. So while I was sitting there, I watched a family come running up and they'd missed their time. And, it was a lot of money for those tickets. If they'd bought them directly through the Uffizi, they would have paid, I think, about 45 euros or something per ticket. And there was like 5 or 6 of them. And if they had bought it through a third party, it would have been substantially more. I don't know what they're charging now, but it was a lot more back then. But it was just that not being there on time. So you really have to factor that in and know it, whatever it is that you're going to.
Mm-hmm. And I would say you also have to book well in advance for some of these places. I imagine the Vasari corridor has been shut for a very long time. So people who would want to go see that will be snapping those tickets, and there's very limited tickets. Another one where people are constantly disappointed is the Last Supper in Milan. You need to book in advance and they get sold out.
I haven't had anybody through there for a while. What is the latest on how far ahead you have to book?
For Last Supper, I would say at least a couple of months.
Yeah, and also it depends on when you're going. If you're June, July, August, September, well, August maybe not quite so bad, but those high tourism months, everyone wants to go. So it gets really tricky. I have people messaging me saying, "Oh, I'm going to Naples next week. Can I have your list of private guides?" And I'm like, "Next week?" They've been booked out for 6 months. So things like booking guides and drivers, you got to get those bookings in well in advance. Like as soon as you've got your dates lined up, if you're booking private guides, get them booked because they all get booked out.
This is another thing. Unfortunately, you can't wing travel into these major areas like you used to be able to do. So, even as much as we like to say, just go with the flow and do your own thing and travel your own way, you can really get unstuck if you're not booking the major things in advance. So, people get maybe a little bit, they maybe think that we're being a bit precious, but we know that you don't want to be spending hours in lines. You do not want to be disappointed. I know so many people that wanted to go to the Borghese Gallery in Rome, and the tickets are sold out like well in advance and
months in advance.
months.
Palazzo Farnese, if you want to go to the Farnese, which is the French embassy, is in this palazzo in Rome, and it's got unbelievable art. Well, they only open it to the public a couple of times a week, and it's got really strict rules, really, really strict for getting there. I can look months in advance and it's still booked out. Like, so it's some of the stuff is really tricky. So I think part of your expectations are to have a much bigger list of things you want to see and do. And if you can't get something in, like that, you can't get tickets, it's not the end of the world because here's another 10 things you could
Oh, the
choose
good
from.
news is you'll never run out of anything to do. But so maybe then we should also talk about restaurants in that regard, because if you want to go to some of the restaurants that you might have seen featured on social media, and we can have a little chat about that as well, you do need to book in advance. Like there's some places that people know. One of my favorite restaurants used to be Roscioli Salumeria, but I can't get in. You can't get in there anymore, and so I share these places quite judiciously now because I actually like to go to my favorite restaurants in Rome.
I normally don't tell people where it is that I go, but I will say a lot of the time that you see something on social media, it's going to be more of a tourist place. And I want to eat real Italian foods, but where the Italians eat. So I like to go a couple of blocks back. I just look in places and see is it full of Italians, and then it's a win because they're not going to pay too much and they are really discerning eaters. And if it's full of American tourists or full of tourists, I might keep moving because there's going to be somewhere else.
Yeah, I think the demand that you see for some of these sandwich places or panini places is just insane.
Oh, it's
And
insane.
just go to the market and ask for l'amprodotto, knowing full well that you're going to get tripe, though. Sorry, just putting that one out there. But you can get other flavors. But, yes, we all want to be part of those exciting moments of having that thing. There's usually an equally, if not better, alternative that you can find.
Yeah, that you don't have to wait in line for an hour for. I mean, like some of the lines for the sandwich place, and I've written about the sandwich place. I loved it for years. I absolutely loved it, but then it became so explosive, and there's no way I'm going to stand in line for an hour of my time in Italy to get a sandwich. That's not realistic. But I was going to say, Katy, I have this app on my phone that I use for booking restaurants if I think I'm going to need a booking for somewhere. And that's The Fork. Have you ever used that one?
Yes.
Yeah, I've found that really good. But also, they only get so many seats per session. So if The Fork says it's booked out, still reach out to the restaurant because 9 times out of 10, they're like, oh, we only have 4 tables that we allow for The Fork or whatever apps. There's lots of foodie apps, but oftentimes if you call the restaurant, they can get you in anyway. And restaurants typically are not kicking off at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the evening. Like a lot of my North American people are freaking out and they're like, what do you mean I have to wait till 7:30 to have dinner? I'm like, yeah, that's just how it goes here. So you can expect to be eating later. They do have this glorious event every day called Aperitivo Hour, where you can, hit that late afternoon, have a spritz or a glass of wine and a platter of snacks, and then you're going to be fine to eat your dinner later if you've got a later dinner happening.
You just made me think the Italians are always eating. We have merenda, which is the afternoon tea. We have the aperitivo. What always bugs me, and I really reckon we should do we need a health expert on this situation, because if you are in any English speaking country, the whole thing is don't eat all the time, leave 3 hours between meals, don't eat too many carbs, do this, do that. I don't know. The Italians seem to ignore all these rules and be fabulous.
For those of you who haven't been before, you'll see when you get there, they are a slim race. I know here in the United States, there's something like 40% of the population is obese and 30% is overweight for a total of 70%. I might have those around the wrong way. But in Italy, 10% of the population is overweight. Like they're slim. They eat all the time. They eat pizza, they eat pasta, they eat all this stuff. They're slim, they're healthy. I found out a couple of years ago that they have 25% of the heart interventions that we do, from EKGs to heart attacks to stents to pacemakers and all that stuff. 25% per capita. And yet they do all
Yes.
the things that we're told are wrong. So I actually know you should have on to talk about all this
All
health
right,
stuff
you
because
can give me those
it's
dates later. But yeah, I think
eye-opening.
this is my number one tip. Please don't restrict anything when you're there. Just please have the most wonderful time. I feel like we do this incredible disservice to ourselves in terms of like a lot of things. But you know, you're in Italy. You have it's a once in a lifetime trip. We have some people that coming on our tours that no, I don't think they were in Tuscany with us last week, and they were like, "Yes, we are putting everything aside." I was like, "Respect," because just enjoy
Exactly.
everything.
Leave your diet back in your home country and just come and get into this because it's so great. But there's one thing I'll tell you that
Mm.
drives me up the wall, and that is when you sit down at a table in a restaurant in Italy and they bring out the bread, especially people from North America will dive on it like savages and wolf it all up. Now, the bread has several roles in an Italian meal or several jobs. So, for example, if somebody at the table is ordering a tagliere plate with sliced cold meats, you know, if you think like prosciuttos and cheeses, part of the use of that bread basket on the table is they can, you know, put some of their meat or their cheese on a piece of bread and be sitting there talking and eating. You use bread at the end of, for example, a pasta dish. You'll pick up your piece of bread and swoop it around to pick up the last of the sauce. It's called scarpetta. But there's things like that, so that jumping in maniacally and wolfing down all the bread, also doing the oil and the vinegar and that whole thing and dipping it all in, that's not an Italian thing. So
They put it there for you,
before
but
you
it's fine.
nail all the bread, just think about the other people at the table. And it happens like every tour. So now I'm just like, all right, if I've got a tour group with me, I'm not going to order any taglieri. I'll plan on not ever having a scarpetta on my at the end of my pasta or whatever because they're going to wolf
They
it
can
all
do that,
down.
but the problem with that is if you fill up on the bread, you're going to miss out on the delicious taste that's going to happen later. So, I mean, you do you. If you want to eat the bread, you do you. All right, but there are consequences.
Ordering wine there is different from ordering wine here because so much of the flavor pairing is done. So it's a good idea to ask your waiter what wine he would recommend you have with whatever you've just ordered. A lot of things you can get by the glass. So he might be like, oh, I'd have a glass of Vermentino with this, or no, you need a good strong Brunello with this, whatever. So that's kind of different from in the United States. What about coffee culture? Should we talk about coffee culture?
Yeah. Let's quickly go through it. I think the general rule here when it comes to food and drink is that you're in a different country, embrace everything, try everything. If you in Australia, I think everyone in Australia is actually a little bit obsessed with coffee, so we'll probably know that they don't have Moccona and Nescafe Gold, but but it's part of the fun, you know. Like, okay, if you've never tried a macchiato before, give it a go, and if you don't like it, that's only €2, you know, big deal. But you had a go of the culture and you tried the Italian coffee.
Well, it's not like most places, it's not even €2. So when you're away from the big city centers, you know, I pay in my town, I think it's 120 for a cappuccino. But don't be scared to try things. It's not like you're going to Starbucks and this drink costs $7 and it's, you know, 20 ounces tall or something. We're talking about a small coffee. It's gonna cost around €1, €2. It's nothing. If you don't like it, oh wow, you lost $2. Nothing. But you're not going to see American drip coffee. That's not normal there. And most of their coffee drinks are espresso based. So what we would call an espresso, they call it a coffee. A coffee to them is what we would call an espresso. And I think everybody probably already knows that latte is milk. If you want a what we would call a latte, you're going to order a cafe latte. But I recommend people when you first go into so coffee happens in a bar. That's where we get the word barista from. When you first go in, just take a couple of beats to observe because most places you're going to go to a pay station and pay first. They're going to give you a ticket that you're then going to go up to the counter and order. So I like to do a little scope behind that glass case to see if I'm going to have a pastry or something or not. I need to know that before I go order. And also there's two different prices. If you're standing up at the bar to drink your coffee, then it's a different price than if you're sitting down at a table. And that's pretty standard over all of Italy. So don't think that somebody's ripping you off.
No. Yeah, it's just some different cultural tips. And you know what? This is like really quick stuff that we're doing. We actually have quite a lot of episodes that go into these deep dive, which we will link to into the show notes so you can really go and explore the different topics. Also, if you have our app, you'll be able to find them very easily because they're organized in the travel tips section.
Okay, so rental cars. I've got a few quick tips for rental cars. Number one, you're going to rent the smallest car you possibly can. So pack smaller. You don't need, huge suitcases, but get the smallest car because these roads get very, very narrow and parking is very difficult for most non-Italians because you'll see when you get there, teeny tiny parking spaces and they all park like 2 inches spare on each side. I recommend always picking up your car at an airport. So yes, there's bound to be a rental car place close in town, but it's difficult to drive inside these towns. There's ZTL areas where you can cross into, like Google Maps will send you into them and you'll incur huge fines and it can just be really stressful. At the airports, so yes, you might burn half an hour by taking a train or a taxi or a tram or whatever to the airport. But when you pick up a car at the airport, first of all, they have all the cars. It's much easier. Secondly, they tip you out onto the motorway. So you've just gotten rid of all that stress part and now you're just making the loop straight onto the motorway and off you go. It's so much easier. Leave nothing inside the car. When you park that car to go into whatever it is that you're going in to see, don't leave clothes on the back seat. Don't leave a baseball hat on the back seat. Don't leave anything because chances are someone's going to break in and take it. And your rental cars are very easy to identify. So everything's out of sight. And the last thing I say is get the super cover insurance. So that's the one that's going to give you a zero deductible because deductibles tend to be really high, like 3,000 to 5,000 euros. So a small ding in a parking lot can cost you a whole lot of money.
Oh, it must have international driver's permit also.
Oh, yeah. I just renewed mine the other day.
Yeah, otherwise, people like to argue about this. I don't know why. But you need it. And if you're stopped, first of all, they might not rent you the car if you don't have it. Depends how thorough they are with the paperwork. If you're stopped and you don't have it, you will risk a fine. You will get a fine. And if you're in an accident, well, you invalidate your insurance. So for $30,
it's a must. And so a lot of rental car places don't need to ask for it. But if you get pulled over, and it's not that you get pulled over for speeding. I mean, they have lots of traffic things where they stop every 10th car or whatever. I had one of those in the Marque last year. But they have to see your international driver's license. They're not going to accept your home driver's license. And you can get in a world of trouble. And if somebody crashes you and you don't have that, you're toast for a lot of money.
In the immortal words of Chappelle Rowan, good luck, babe. That's what I say.
What about trains, Katy? What do you think? Can you tell them about trains?
I would say that, especially for the first trip, most people are doing the classic Rome, Florence, Venice, maybe a little bit of Tuscany. You don't need a car. You just get the train, and it's so much easier. So if you're just going to cities, you don't need a car.
Absolutely.
You should just get the train. It's fast, it's efficient, it's all of the above, and you'll get there in shorter time than if you had a car, and it'll cost less because you won't have to pay for parking or anything like that. If you're thinking it's an excellent idea to drive on the Amalfi Coast, you're wrong.
No.
We've done it. And look, it's just not a place to drive unless maybe in the winter.
You're going to back up all the traffic for a really long time while you're trying to navigate stuff. Just don't do it.
Don't do it. But with the trains, I love going on the train in Italy. It's so relaxing. We did a great journey from Rome to Bolzano earlier this year. It was 5 hours. Sit back, relax, free Wi-Fi.
I would say so that they have like different levels of train. So the high-speed trains are the Auto Veloce. Alto Veloce trains. With those, the earlier you purchase your ticket, the lower the price. So it used to be they released them 3 months before, and the price would be really low per ticket. And by the time you got up to the day before, if there was tickets still available, which in peak season you may or may not be able to get on that train if you haven't booked your tickets in advance. But by then, the tickets are often double, triple the price that they were way back when. So buy your tickets early. What do you think on that? Like I buy them as soon as I know that I'm going from Rome to Florence on the 25th, boom, I'm buying those tickets right then.
I get the one that's flexible. You can change the day and the time. Unless if you know exactly when you want to go, that's cool. You can get them really cheap, can't you?
Absolutely. And, for a lot of people, if a train ticket is 50 euros more per person, that's a lot of money,
Mm-hmm.
So every 50 euros that you saved on paying for a late train ticket is 50 euros that you can be shopping with. So I would put the money there. And then there's also the intercity trains are really good too. They just have more stops in between cities. When you are in the train station, you want to cross through security. I think they let you go through 40 minutes before. And this is just, you've got to scan your QR code or your pass and go through. You don't want to wait until your train platform is announced because it can be too much of a crush and you can be, it can just push you back time-wise. So I go through early, doesn't matter if which side I'm standing on, whatever, I'm going to be through. And then they're not going to normally announce your platform until about 10 minutes beforehand. Now, in Rome, for example, when I'm taking my train to where I live in Tuscany, it's on a far, far, far platform that adds an additional 10 minutes. So they normally announce that train beforehand, like they'll announce the ones going to 1E and 2E. But in general, your platform is going to be announced about 10 minutes beforehand. So you want to be through on the other side, get out of people's way, because it's so annoying when you're trying to move through your train station quickly with luggage and there's a bunch of clowns standing there with stuff all over the place and they can't get out of your way. So get out of people's way, eyeball to see which end is platform number 1 or which end is platform number 20, so that when yours comes up, you know which direction you're going. And then you're going to look at the board called partenza. Partenza means departing trains. And you'll see your train on there a long time beforehand, like an hour or so beforehand at least. But the platform or binario won't be announced until 10 minutes before. And also, you're going to have a look at your train number because, for example, say I was going to Rome, that train might be ending in Naples, in which case it's going to say the 257 to Naples. It's not going to say Rome on there. So I've got to look for train 257 and then see where that is, and then it'll announce the platform for that. And in the bigger train stations, like in Rome and I think in Florence, I can't think where else actually, but a lot of the big stations, there'll be TV screens hanging from the roof down the platform, little small screens that as the train's getting ready to come in, it will put there the number of the carriage. So if you are on carriage number 6, you're going to be looking at these little screens above until it says number 6, and that's where you're going to stand and wait.
So many good tips. We've got detailed things if you want to read up on it, and it's really good idea to do it just so you feel more comfortable. So with our trip planning clients, we have a lot of people that are quite nervous about getting trains, but once they've done it once, they're like, oh my goodness, this was so easy, and they're absolute professionals at it after that.
Yeah, and if you have your app, do you have the breakdown in the app?
Yes. What we tried to do is just like give everyone information that they need because, we talk about this a lot and we talk to people traveling a lot, and we have ourselves experienced these several times and had some bloopers along the way. So, yeah. Now, I just want to wrap this amazing session up with one more topic, which is packing. Actually, I'm going to change it. We've got 2 more topics. There is one place that has some specific things that are important to know about, and that is Venice. And I've just had someone that I'm very friendly with, book a trip to Italy, and they're arriving in Venice at nearly midnight, and it's actually going to be a little bit of a challenge to get to their hotel, and that's because Venice is a city that's built on water, and until you've been there and you can see that it's just not somewhere where cars go, you can't really assume that you're going to get from A to B in the way that you might assume in any other city, which is what makes it magical, right? If you're getting in late, have a think about where you stay. You should be, if you're wanting to stay on the lagoon, really go close to Piazzale Roma so you can get a taxi from the airport. There are other options, but it starts to become challenging and pricey.
Very pricey. A water taxi from the airport to come across the lagoon to Venice, it's what, 150, 180?
His friend just got quoted €200, so.
Yeah, and depending too on what time of year it is, and what events are on, it can be very expensive. And the airport is far from the city. So you just know that going in. They have other options at the Alla Laguna, which is €15, takes about an hour to come over, but that doesn't run all night. So, I mean, I would say if your flights come in late at night, I would probably just stay on the mainland near the airport and come over the next morning because it can be tricky. Venice operates differently. It's not on a grid system. It's not easy streets to navigate. It's up and down over bridges and around corners and all the rest. So depending on where you're staying, that can be a little bit of a headache.
And one more thing about Venice, depending on the dates that you're visiting, they have got a new tourist tax that's been implemented there. So if you're visiting for the day, you need to pay a charge. It ranges between €5 and €10, depending on where you buy it. But it does mean that you need to pay attention because also if you're staying on the lagoon and your accommodation should advise you of this, that you need to apply for an exemption. And so these only applies to specific days across the year that are particularly busy. You won't be surprised to know we have a detailed article on that and the information
There
is in
you
our app.
go. I just did all of mine for my June tours just recently. With this, I will say that I recommend all my people when you get so you're going to go and you're going to check your dates to see if this even applies to you because it's not all the dates, it's just the busy dates. But it takes 10 seconds to do this online. It's not any big deal. If you're staying at an Airbnb vacation rental, some of them will do it for you. I wouldn't rely on that because I would just do it myself and have it. I tell everybody print it out and then also take a screenshot because if you were to get pulled over and checked and you didn't have that on you, it's a big fine, a big one. And last year, I did not see one person get pulled over, and I was there for a bunch of the days. So maybe nothing will happen, but it's bad news if it does. And you can't fake it because remember how we talked about your passport getting registered with the police saying where you're staying? When they scan your QR code, it's going to come up your passport and it's on your QR code for your exemption. It's going to say the address of where you're staying, and that better match what is with the police station, what's been filed for you. So you can't pull a fast one on this. And they're doing it so that if you're coming in as a day tripper on one of these busy days, if you book your day tripper pass more than 4 days beforehand, you get it for €5. If you're booking it in the last 4 days, you get it for €10. And they haven't yet cut off a number of people as far as I know. But if I know that I'm going to be going to Venice for the day on the 23rd, as soon as I know I'm going to Venice for the day on the 23rd, I'm going to check and see if that's one of the dates, and I'm going to get that day pass right now.
Exactly. Okay, so now for the very last hurrah of these quick tips for first-time travelers. This is actually, I would have to say, some of the most important tips, really. Like this is like the non-negotiables is, travel as light as possible with a maximum medium case. Maximum. Like if you think you're going to do it with a large case, think again. I mean, you can do it for sure. If you have the Louis Vuitton of luggage and you have drivers whisking you around everywhere, go for it. But for the rest of us,
for most of us mere mortals, we're not doing that. So you really need to think this out. And you need to know that just because a place has an elevator doesn't mean it's going to be working. And there's a lot of places that won't, and you're going to have to be taking your luggage up the steep staircases. So I think pack light is really important.
And the other, the other one that we absolutely think is just a non-negotiable is the shoes.
Oh, yeah, you're going to walk. I mean, Italy is all walking. You've got to have comfortable shoes. Don't be thinking about fashion first, thinking about foot comfort first.
Yeah, and I think that will wrap us up for today. Oh, you've got another one? Let me
I
know.
got one more.
Got one more.
This is a great, just out of nowhere tip that I recommend for everybody. And that is bring those little, those little alcohol wipes that you can get. Like if you were going to do a injection, they'd give you those little wipes. Have those in your handbag or in your wallet or whatever. Because if you start getting car sick or seasick or motion sick or nauseous, then one of the brilliant things to do is you open up that and you hold it under your nose and you inhale it. And ER doctors will tell you it works faster than any car sick medicine or than any nausea medicine. It's brilliant.
I did not know.
That's
I thought you were going to say wrinkle release spray or those clothes cleaning wipes, which I'm obsessed with, the clothes cleaning wipes, because that just saves a whole lot of effort. But
But there's so many times where you'll, maybe on a car trip going up to Prosecco country, or you're hitting the Amalfi Coast Road. Well, lots of people get car sick on that. Or you're taking a ferry across to Capri and it's just a wobbly day and suddenly you're feeling awful. You don't want to blow out your whole day. And most of us are not going to be carrying around a first aid kit with us all day, every day. So if this does happen, to be able to whip out one of these teeny little square things, stick it under your nose, breathe it in, and it's magic.
I'm just going to go out and buy some because I have one child who is prone to that situation. So
I get so car sick if I'm not in the front seat. I do pretty well on boats now, but it's miserable if you get motion sickness, and it can impact your whole day as well. So if you got this little emergency trick, boom. And I learned it from an ER doctor.
well, we trust them. Do you have a message, though, for first-time visitors to Italy? Have you got anything that you'd like to say just to wish them well on their way?
Everything, do everything. Like leave all of your home traditions at home and embrace being in Italy, embrace the Italian culture. So that might be eating at different times, eating different things. Like, breakfast is a cappuccino and a croissant. So, try the different things. Don't get locked into whatever your systems are at home, and take time to just breathe it all in. It's the most magnificent country.
It really is. We're so lucky to have this opportunity and to keep talking about it together. And I really always appreciate you coming on to talk to me, Corinna, and everyone listening, because you have such a great perspective on things. And I think everyone just, I think we said last time we chatted, just please, please don't delay these trips because it does sound like a lot. We've covered a lot in an hour, and there are things you can do. And you know what? Some things are going to go wrong, and it doesn't matter. It's going to be absolutely fine. And maybe then you can start a podcast talking about all the things that went wrong on your trip to Italy.
Just roll with it. Everything's going to be good. It's going to be great. And Italy is a life-changing experience. So.
Grazie, Corinna. Thank you once again for coming on and sharing everything with us. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me again. Ciao, everybody.
Ciao, ciao. Grazie mille to Corinna for sharing her wisdom, honesty, and signature sparkle with us yet again. I absolutely love how she brings both a sense of adventure and those practical tips that make all the difference to a first trip, or let's face it, any trip to Italy. I hope you feel a little more prepared and a lot more excited for your Italian adventures after this episode. If you're hungry for more details, you're in luck. Everything we mentioned today, all of Corinna's handy travel, credit card tips, advice for trains, tickets, passports, accommodation, and those ever-important comfortable shoes is waiting for you in the episode show notes. Plus, you'll find links to Corinna's best-selling Glam Italia travel guides and more traveller resources. Head to untolditaly.com/276 for all of those details and deep dives. And if you haven't checked out our Untold Italy app, now is the perfect time. With the upgraded version, you'll get ad-free listening of our entire back catalogue of episodes and an easy way to discover content by destination, topic, or trip planning need. It truly is the easiest way to keep Italy inspiration at your fingertips. And finally, if you found today's episode helpful or inspiring, we'd absolutely love it if you could leave us a quick rating or review. It only takes a few seconds, but it genuinely helps so many other Italy lovers and first-time visitors discover our show and the great advice from guests like Corinna. Thanks so much for listening. In our next episode, we're heading back to another corner of Untold Italy, and you won't want to miss it. But until then, it's ciao for now. The Untold Italy podcast is an independent production. Podcast editing, audio production and website development by Mark Hatter, production assistance and content writing by the other Katy Clarke. Yes, there are two of us. For more information about Untold Italy, please visit untolditaly.com.